Good evening, Professor Lee and friends in North and South America, and then very late evening, friends in Europe, and also good morning, friends in Asia and Australia. So today is a great honor to have Professor Lee to talk about his new vision about supply chain management. So before Professor Lee gives our seminar, I would like to invite our Vice President and Vice Chancellor Research, and also Chair Professor in Logistics and Supply Chain Management, Professor Max Shan, to give a welcoming speech. Thank you, Professor Max Shan.
Thank you, Yunhong. So it's our great pleasure to welcome Professor Lee to our seminar. And everybody online, welcome to this seminar. It's our great pleasure to welcome you to, this is the 7th seminar of this series. And Professor Lee, I don't need to introduce you to all these people, all our audience, but Hao has been a pioneer and very influential scholar in the field of supply chain management, value chain innovation, and operations management in general, and also really importantly, a loyal alumnus of Hong Kong U. So we are very excited to learn from Professor L.Lee about his insights into the new modes of global supply chains and how new technologies can help gain supply chain excellence. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the 7th seminar already in this Systems Analytics Global Leaders Seminar Series. And this is organized by the Department of Industrial and Manufacturing Systems Engineering of Hong Kong U. The objective of this research seminar series is to provide a platform to connect global academics, researchers, and practitioners in industrial and systems engineering, management science, and engineering in general. So the seminar topics cover a broad range of application domains, such as construction, finance, healthcare, logistics, transportation, manufacturing, and supply chains. So we have invited distinguished scholars and industrial leaders all around the world to share with us their visions, insights, and ideas about our research fields. So I wish to take this opportunity to thank the seminar organizers from the Department of Industrial and Manufacturing Systems Engineering and our 6 previous distinguished speakers. I hope this seminar series will continue to stimulate novel and impactful research ideas and benefit our research community. So once again, our sincere thanks to Professor L.Lee to give us this exciting seminar and all the people who have made this seminar series possible. And I wish all of you a really productive, healthy, successful year of the Ox. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Max Shan. So as Professor Max Shan mentioned earlier, actually it's the 7th seminar of our series. So we have our distinguished speakers, and also thanks to Professor Max Shan for your great support in our seminar series. And as some promotion, we will have another 6 seminars coming. So the next one would be on March 24th to be delivered by Professor Jin Jun Shi. And so let's continue. So thank you very much, Professor Lee. So I also would like to thank the support from 2 other organizing organizations. One is the Institute of Physical Internet, Jinan University, and also the Logistics and Supply Chain Innovation Alliance of Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. And I also wish to take this opportunity to thank our organizing committee. So let me now introduce Professor Lee to you. So as Professor Max Shan mentioned, so actually Professor Lee is very influential, very famous in the field, but still I need to introduce our distinguished speaker. Professor L.Lee is the Thommer Professor of Operations, Information and Technology at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. He was the founding faculty director of the Stanford Institute for Innovation in Developing Economies and is the current co-director of the Stanford Value Chain Innovations Initiative. Professor Lee's expertise is on global supply chain management and value chain innovations. He has published widely in top journals on supply chain management. He was inducted to the U.S. National Academy of Engineering and elected a fellow of AMSOM, POMS, and INFORMS. In 2006 and 2007, he was the president of the Production and Operations Management Society. His article, The Triple A, Supply Chain, was the second place winner of the McKinsey Award for the best paper in 2004 in the Harvard Business Review. In 2004, he co-authored the paper in 1997, Information Distortion in a Supply Chain, a Bullwhip Effect, was voted as one of the 10 most influential papers in the history of management science, as we all know. Besides extensive consulting, he co-founded Demantech, a price optimization company that went public in NASDAQ in 2007. He was the founding chairman of SCM World, and which was acquired by Gartner in 2016. He is currently an independent non-executive director of CNEX and the Lion Rock Group, and is on the advisory board of Altos Ventures and L.Lee. Professor Lee obtained his Bachelor of Social Science degree in economics and statistics from the University of Hong Kong, and his Master of Science degree in operational research from the London School of Economics, and his MS and PhD degrees in operations research from Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania. He was awarded an honorary doctoral degree, engineering degree by the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and an honorary doctorate from the Erasmus University of Rotterdam. So a lot of great achievements. So every single sentence is a very amazing achievement. And also, I'm now teaching at Hong Kong. Whenever I teach supply chain management, the Bullwhip effects, I must mention Professor Lee is our distinguished alumni that we must learn from. So that's why I also invite many of our students to join the seminar. So without further ado, may I invite Professor Lee to talk, to deliver his vision to us about the new supply chain management. May we join me a big welcome to Professor Lee. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thanks very much, Yung Hong. It's very kind of you to make this introduction. I also want to say I'm very happy to meet many of my colleagues at Hong Kong U here. And Professor Max Shan is actually a very good friend and collaborator, and somebody, a scholar that I also have the highest respect. And he himself is quite an accomplished scholar. So I think Hong Kong U is great to have him join, and I look forward to a chance that I will get to visit your department, Hong Kong U, as well as Max Shan too. So I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. So what I am sharing today is a combination of some thoughts that I have regarding the trend and regarding the directions of supply chain management, but also to use this as a chance to share 3 papers that I have done recently. So this is by no means a single research paper talk. So that's why I would not be able to go deep into each of the research paper like in a regular research seminar. But I also hope to give you a chance to see the kind of research that I have been conducting, and at the same time, the big picture that I thought about how we should, as researchers, contribute. Here you can see in my introduction and the title slide on the right-hand side is the picture of Hong Kong U. It turns out this is a picture I took personally. I was at the Hong Kong U in 2016, attending a meeting, advisory board meeting of the Asian Global Institute. And at the meeting, I looked out from the window and I said, wow, this is great. This is beautiful. And this is a very historic building. So I took a picture of it to save in my iPhone. And so I'm using it here to show that I am very much indebted to Hong Kong U, because this is where I first started my higher education. And so I wanted to give back to the school alma mater. The title of the talk is New Supply Chain Renaissance. Renaissance, of course, we all know what is Renaissance. Renaissance is, by the time, European transformation, a major transformation where art and new way of thinking came about. It turns out I have to give back to some history. In 2014, I was invited by the organization in the Netherlands, Supply Chain Group, and they asked me to speak about the trends and the new way of supply chain. So at that time, I chose the title of the Renaissance of Supply Chain Management. You could tell that in 2014, my hair was darker than now, and now I'm all gray hair. Yeah, so only a matter of 7 years has turned all gray. But at that time, I talk about the fact that supply chain is undergoing tremendous transformation. Things are different. Things are not stagnant. We have to make major transformation. And so I use the term the Renaissance of supply chain management. In fact, I said that supply chain leaders should be like a Renaissance man or Renaissance woman, depending on the gender. But we all need to make changes to the world of supply chain, because the simple extension of work that we did is no longer sufficient. So what is a Renaissance of supply chain management? 7 years ago, I talked about it, but now I said new Renaissance. New Renaissance is necessary. Why? Because earlier this year, 2021, January, you can see January 10, 2021, I stumbled on a web page called the National Law Review. And I said, gee, law people are talking about Renaissance. There is an article there that said that COVID-19, Renaissance of the supply chain. And I said, gee, we supply chain people know what is supply chain management. What do the lawyers know? The lawyers are invading into our territory. The lawyers are talking about supply chain renaissance. Interesting. It means that every field, they're talking about the change in the supply chain, the threat of supply chain disruptions, and we all must do something about the changing transformation of supply chain. So I think that this is a timely subject. This is important. If the law people talk about supply chain, we as supply chain people, we as researchers in industrial engineering, operations management, we should take charge. We should take charge to talk about what exactly are we talking about in the new way of doing supply chain management. So I want to share with you this talk about the new renaissance of supply chain management, so that hopefully the law people would also say that, wow, yeah, we can learn from the supply chain people as well. So that it's not the other way around, that we go to the National Law Review Journal to read about supply chain. And now I want to use a metaphor. This is actually a metaphor, a lens to look at what could be the renaissance of supply chain management. And I use this very old Chinese literature, and I studied it when I was a child, I remember, which talk about the following. And I think that most of you, those of you who read Chinese, can see that what I'm talking about. And it came from the very well-known disciple of Confucius, Zhuji, and it was written, and no exact date, but it was written most likely the 500 BC. Between 505 and 434 BC. So this is written more than 2,500 years ago. And it talks about the fact that the steps to better the world would have to be, first, you have to better yourself, and then you expand and extend it to the family, to the nation, and eventually it could be the universe. So you start with small, we start inwardly looking, but then you expand, you must expand. You cannot stay only where you are. You expand and eventually you extend it to the rest of the world. And so I use this metaphor to look at the new supply chain renaissance. In supply chain, we often talk about how to improve the supply chain. but we started with the enterprise or maybe a small set of supply chain players. How can we improve the immediate supply chain? That's the enterprise. And the way the renaissance is happening is because of the advances of technology. Because of the advances of digital technology in particular, I think the enterprise or the immediate supply chain is going through substantial transformation, which is kind of like the Renaissance. But the Renaissance man or woman does not stay there. What we should do is to now look at a much more extended supply chain where we have to start thinking about supply chain people is not because I'm in the control tower and I am in a better control tower, I manage and control everyone. No, we have to make sure that the other partners also have their own way of doing things. They also are thinking about their control tower. Everyone has a control tower. If everyone has a control tower, we could be in conflict and we could be fighting over each other. So we need to have a new form or new forms of supply chain collaboration so that the different control towers can work together well. But ultimately, we must think big. We think big about the whole ecosystem. The whole ecosystem means that it's not just people who work with you. It's not just the company that is your supplier. It's not just the company that is your customer. So it could be the people, the community touched by those suppliers. And so it could be people who have perhaps no direct transactional relationship, commercial relationship with you, but affected by your actions, or maybe can contribute to the success of your actions. So think about the most of us think of supply chain as maybe your suppliers, your first tier supplier, your second tier supplier, you're the final tier supplier. But what about the families of the suppliers, the families of the workers that work in the factories in your suppliers, and the communities, the society at large? They could be affected by your action, and they could also contribute to the success and failure of your actions and your company as well. And I think Yong Hong introduced me earlier that I was the founding director of the Stanford Institute of Innovation in Developing Economy. And that required me to set up centers in Africa. So today that institute has a center in West Africa, which I started in Ghana. And we also now has a center in East Africa. We have an institute in South Africa. We have an institute in India. And the main thing is because we said that businesses become part of the supply chain of many global companies. But we must make sure that the people there benefit from it and they can participate, and the poverty alleviation can be resulted as a result by using innovations. And so that's the ecosystem. Ecosystem benefit from social innovations using the supply chain. So these are the three levels that I described. It's very similar to what Zhu Qi says. First, better yourself, improve yourself, then your families, then your country, and then the world at large, kind of like the universe. And so progressively, we should go from the bottom to the top as shown in this diagram. So let's talk about the first level. The first level is the enterprise level, building digital technology capabilities. Now there, the big picture, I first described the big picture, and then I described one tiny example of a research paper that I did together with some of my co-authors on this particular level. So Gartner has just come out. I think those of you who follow Gartner is the company that I'm still advising. And Gartner has just come out with the 10 strategic technology trends in 2021. Now you can see that in every year they would come up with something. And these good consulting companies would do. And they said that in 2020, they have the top 10 strategic technologies. And there they talk about people-centric and smart specs, smart, which is AI, machine learning, and building intelligence. And this year, they've split it into multiple columns. by having still people-centric is there. And then they also have resilient delivery plus location independence. Location independence is the ubiquitous capability. And so this is more sensors and IoT and so on. But then they talk about combinatorial innovation, meaning that you need to have a combination. You don't just have one single technology innovation, you have the combination. So that's what Gartner said. I also want to reference McKinsey last year. McKinsey last year that says that COVID-19 is a big disruption. And the way you have to do that well in the supply chain is the layer. First, transparencies. Second, optimization, which is what we do as researchers in operations research, industrial engineering. We are good in optimization. And then having an understanding of what the final customer's demands are. So this is sensing the customer's demand, using different way. So Professor Mac Shan and I have been discussing how to do the C2M. Companies to do C2M is to understand the consumer, and then you create solutions, you create products for them. So I think this is what McKinsey said. Similarly, what McKinsey also said is that when we try to restart after the disruption of COVID-19, to restart and rebuild, and again, it says that the key is digital technology. Digital technologies are new data sources, new automation means, new algorithms, and ubiquitous. Ubiquitous is what Gartner talked about, right? The location independence. When I was the chairman of SCM World in 2017, we came up with the report. And the report is still very relevant. It's about using digital technologies to do sense and respond. Better sensing, supply sensing, demand sensing, better response, supply response, demand response. And then in the middle is the algorithm, is the brain, is better optimization and better decision making. So I think that we as operations researchers, operations management researchers, or industrial engineers should be in charge of this whole thing. Using technologies like cloud computing, blockchain, and the latest microbiome, IoT and RFID, and also doing response. So the right-hand side is the sensing, the left-hand side is the response. And so that's a very exciting that the digital technology is enabling us to create new solutions, to help new solutions. Yeah. So I should mention microbiome as an exciting one is the kind of like dust that you can just collect some dust, and using dust, you can tell what the environment is. And I work with the Hong Kong-based company Li and Feng quite extensively, and they have been starting to experiment to say, hey, what if we can collect dust in the factory in Pakistan or in India or in multiple developing countries, and we'll be able to use the dust to infer what kind of people work in the factories. So no child labor, hopefully, and what type of a setting. So this is fascinating. And here is an example of IoT. IoT, I work with a company called L.Lee based in the US, and they were able to use very good sensors to sense the condition of the blood plasma. And you just say, hey, is the blood plasma in good condition? Or is it expiring? Or is it in the cold freezer? And so this is very relevant for today's vaccines. And then Hong Kong is going to have vaccination open. I think this is fantastic. So more of us can be vaccinated. The vaccines has to be tracked very well. And this is not vaccine they were tracking. They were just simply tracking blood plasma. And the amazing thing is that by being able to track it end to end with the right condition, not just the hard data, but soft characteristics, the ROI can be 50 times. And so it shows the power. So in IoT, one of the IoT that I now focus on, so I focus in the research that I do, is 3D printing. So 3D printing is not IoT. 3D printing is one particular technology which is fascinating, a new kind of technology that also is mentioned by a lot of the people at McKinsey and Gartner, saying that this is another disruptive technology. So HP has produced a lot of 3D printing. In fact, the CEO of that particular division, the president and CEO of the HP Inc. says that 3D printing will help us, HP, to go back because we have been successful in 2D printing. Let's use 3D printer to revive the business. COVID-19 last year, 3D printer has been used extensively to print valves, to print PPEs, ventilators, masks, to help to save the world. 3D printer is what HP is doing to collaborate with Nike, with BMW to produce. And digital medicine, you can print your medicine. So this is great. HP is extensive partnership with Jabil, with Johnson & Johnson, and I mentioned about Nike and BMW and so on. So also 3D printer is considered to be a potential disruptor in the supply chain where instead of build to stock, build to forecast, push mode, it can become a pull, build to order. Build to order would have significant benefit. So this is what the promise. So what I have done is to categorize the potential effect into two classes. I said that first is something I call substitution effect. Substitution effect is because 3D printing can replace the old way of manufacturing. When you replace the old way of manufacturing, it gives you more precision. It gives you potential mass customization. It gives you a chance to produce low demand items. But then the other effect is what I call the structural effect. Structural effect would be build to order instead of build to forecast. And so the question is, can we characterize these two effects as research? Can we demonstrate how these effects can be quantified? And so that started the research question that I did. And I did it together with two co-authors. But the research question was simply described in the following way. Suppose 3D printing initially is introduced at manufacturing, but then later would be at the store. And at the store is a dual channel because these days stores, COVID-19 show that every company is trying to sell online. So eventually we cannot now analyze any of these kind of potential disruption by not taking account of the fact that it's going to be dual channel, both online and offline. And then 3D printing is impacting that. In what way? Substitution effect would be is a better fit. Potentially, I can fit the shoes better. So when Nike says that I can fit better. And to the manufacturer, of course, it's lower inventory. But the manufacturer still sells offline. You still can go to the store to buy Nike shoes, and the Nike shoes can be size 7, size 7.5, size 8, size 8.5. So the options. Now with 3D printing, which is supposed to be tailor cut, can result in changing the number of options offered by the manufacturer. And what about the prices? Would the prices be the same? And what about the environmental impact? And for the structural effect, now eventually the retail store can also has a 3D printing machine so that you can either buy the options or you can buy by waiting, by saying that, okay, I'll stay for an hour and I'll wait and then I can print, I can get the product print. Some companies already experimented with having retail store equipped with 3D printer. And if so, manufacturer and retailers' income would be different. And so would they be in conflict? How can we align the incentives so that both would be better off? So that's the research problem. And to do that, my colleague Lee Chen and Troy also together with me did a paper that will be forthcoming in production and operations management. And there we analyzed 3 cases to demonstrate the effects. The first case is where the manufacturer would do build to stock and also using build to order for the retail channel. So the manufacturer is in charge of manufacturing, but they use 2 different kinds to manufacture at the store as well as at the manufacturing site, which you can also order online. I can order online at Nike, but the manufacturing process is using conventional. But then once I shifted to 3D printer to fulfill the demand of the store, then it is a substitution effect. But later, if the store can also use 3D printer to manufacture, then it's a structural effect. So these are the three cases that we try to consider. And to do that, I have to set up a simple model. And the model is very simple. We said that, okay, well, let's capture production setup costs, because you need to set up for every production option, product option, size 7, size 7.5, size 8, you need a setup cost to set up the options. So the more options that you have, the more setup that you do. And the variable cost, why? Because 3D printing can have a different variable cost compared to conventional printing. Conventional is maybe injection molding. And then also there is a fixed cost to adopt 3D printer. So if every store wants to adopt 3D printing, there is a fixed cost to set it up. The equipment, for example, equipment has to be set up. And then, of course, we have the usual simplest news vendor cost, where if the product option means that you have to pre-stock. Pre-stock means that there will be inventory costs and there could be shortage costs. Same thing. Of course, if you do build to order at the manufacturer using 3D printer, there won't be any news vendor trade-off anymore because I can print to demand. Okay, so definitely, so that's the comparisons of case 1, case 2, and case 3. Decisions. The decisions would be how many options? How many options do I offer? Do I offer 7, 7.5, and 8, or do I offer only 7 and 8? And the people in between use 3D printer to print. So that's the key, is the number of options I offer. How do I price the product? Online versus at the store. And then, of course, the inventory. Now, inventory will go away for the finished product for 3D printing, but not the materials. Now, this time, we have to think about material. You have to stock the material because the plastic is not free. You still have to stock the plastic. You still have to stock the material in order for you to print. So yes, you don't have to stock the finished good, but you stock the material. So now think about if I use 3D printing at the store. It's true that you can print on demand at the store, but you have to stock the material and you have to stock it at every store. So this is why it is not free lunch. There's no complete free lunch. You don't stock finished good, but you have to stock the materials. And of course, I think materials are much cheaper to stock than finished good. And so that still is a trade-off, yeah. And finally, the customer. But the customer can make purchase decision. First is that the customers may say, I don't want to buy your product, either because I don't like the options doesn't fit me well, or I have to wait a long time. It's too long waiting. You're forcing me to do 3D printing, but I think it's too long to wait, and I just give up. I'm not buying shoes. I just buy something else. And I also have to choose, should I buy online versus offline? Notice that online means there is a waiting time. Waiting times are incurred because online is not instantaneous. Today, Amazon can deliver to you in 1 day. JD.com says that I can deliver you in a few hours, but still there's a waiting time. Some people want instant gratification. And then if it's 3D printing, it's even longer. There is a company in Boston which produce clothes using 3D printing. It's a very fancy kind of a cloth. And that company require you to wait for 2 hours to print the clothing. It's a special kind of fabric that they print. So 2 hours, some people will say 2 hours. No, I'm not waiting. I'll just pick up things that you have on stock. Even though it doesn't fit perfectly, I much rather buy something that doesn't fit perfectly because I cannot afford to wait. So we need to develop a choice model. And the choice model that we develop is a very simple model, circular city model. what we did is that we start with 3 types of customers. Some customers don't want to wait. So customers. Some customers are willing to wait. They are quite willing to wait. Type 2 are the customers who are willing to wait online, but not 3D printing. Some customers absolutely do not want to wait online. So there are different types of customers with a different tolerance of patience and waiting. And the circular city framework that we have would be to say, hey, the customers' need for customization is like a circular circle. And if you give me an option that is like A, B, and C, and D, if I happen to be a person on X, so I don't have perfect fit, right? Because the different distance between A and X is the imperfect fit. And so my consumer utility would be, what value do I get from the product? What is the price I have to pay? And the imperfect fit. The imperfect fit means there's a cost. If I am a person at A, there is no imperfect fit, it's perfect. But because I'm at X, so the distance is imperfect fit. And then do I have to wait to get the product, waiting cost? And if the consumer utility is negative, I won't buy. Otherwise, I will be willing to buy, and it would govern, that would tell me which path I would take to buy. And the customer demand, we assume that the customer demand is a normally distributed demand, and where would I be on the circumference of the circle is IID, equally likely. So that was the base choice model. And from that, we derive the analysis. And what we found is that after the analysis, substitution effect would mean that companies would actually offer less options. Now that you allow me to have 3D printing, so people who are impatient to wait would suffer in a sense because you would have less options given. Nike would offer less options. Size 7, size 8, size 9. Instead of, it used to be perhaps 7, 7.5, 7 3/4, 7 1/4, and 8. Because Nike is counting on you to go with 3D printing. But the online price would increase because online is going to be 3D printing. And so they actually can charge you a rent. So and the in-store price would be decreased because to incentivize you to still buy something in-store. Safety stock differences is very clear. Environmental impacts would be positive. But once Nike is able to get the 3D printer also at the store, at Nike Town or at Foot Locker, which Nike is collaborating with Foot Locker. This is the fact. They're collaborating with Foot Locker. Maybe Foot Locker doesn't have 3D printer yet, but maybe if they also have 3D printer, then both channels, they can raise the price actually. And there will be more customers that will steer towards online. Because they also have to wait at store anyway, and so might as well go online. And you need a special kind of contract, which is the contract on how to share the inventory cost and material cost in order to coordinate the channel when both can do 3D printer. So this is an example of how by means of analytical modeling, we can get some additional insight to tell retailers and manufacturers to say, hey, if you're launching 3D printer, it's not everyone that win. You have to do it carefully. And these are the impacts. And you have to coordinate the channel by having the right contract form. So we think that this is the kind of research that can illuminate the fact that when digital technologies are rolled out, it has to be rolled out in the impact can be estimated, the impact can be quantified, and then we'll be able to figure out what is the best way to roll the digital technology out. So that's the first example. So now let me go on to the second example. And the second example this time is new forms of supply chain collaboration. Why do we need new forms of collaboration? Here, McKinsey has done a research in 2014, which I'm quoting back, that says that Shenzhen is very powerful. So McKinsey said Shenzhen has an ecosystem powerful. Why? Because there's so many suppliers, manufacturers, electronic suppliers, electronic apparel, so that the ability for companies to innovate, prototyping, and the cost of prototyping is so much faster because of Shenzhen. It means that you need to collaborate. Collaboration is the key. A single company by itself cannot reap the benefits of the speed. So Shenzhen, of course, now Hong Kong is part of the Greater Bay Area. The Greater Bay Area initiative is powerful. It gives you a new form of collaboration. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, is a fascinating company. I love this company because they have done a fantastic job. Every disruption, starting from 2001 bubble burst, internet bubble burst, to the 2009 economic tsunami, every time they just have a little hiccup and they surpass it. Why? Because the company has created this open innovation platform to allow the IP holders, EDA tool companies, and everyone, design companies, all collaborate in order for them to be able to design chips faster, microprocessor faster, and tape out. And this is how they allow ecosystem partners to collaborate. So collaboration is the key. The Chinese company Haier, based in Qingdao, actually they own GE Appliance, so it's a global company. They created something called Cosmoplat. What is Cosmoplat? Cosmoplat is a platform to allow multiple companies at multi-tier design IP holders, logistic providers, testers, all to collaborate. And in fact, a good example is that in 2020 February, when Chinese New Year just happened, lockdown condition because of COVID-19, complete lockdown in China. And of course, China, when they lock down, is much more effective than the US. Okay, US lockdown is semi-lockdown. I think people still go out, some people went out to party, very bad. But when China is locked down, it's total lockdown. You cannot just go out at all. But in those conditions, when a hospital calls for a particular mobile isolation ward, because the hospital says that the isolation ward should be mobile, we want to move from one hospital to another one. Why? Because the pandemic move, epidemics move. One day it is this city. 1 week later, it's another city. We want the mobile isolation ward to be movable. And they were able to do it under this severe condition in 2 weeks. Nobody goes out, but they were able to complete it and build it and move out. It's mainly because that platform has technology collaboration, has user testing interaction collaboration, has sourcing collaboration, logistic collaboration, and everything done. So this collaboration is a subject that we must work on. So one small project that I did together with some colleagues, my former advisor, actually, Morris Cohen at Wharton, Xi Chen is my former student at U Washington. And so this is like 3 generations. And Tobias Monk is a student of Morris' student at Koblenz in Germany. And so this is a multi-generations collaboration on something of the following nature. We look at collaboration. Now, collaboration between supplier and customer has been done, research, but because usually the way we conduct research that is to look at first is a decentralized system, and then we have a centralized system. Very simple to start. Always people start with decentralized system and centralized. And then we look at how supplier and customer collaborate, the middle two, supplier and customer. But we discovered there are 2 kinds of collaboration. One kind is, we call it SMI, or some companies call VMI, vendor managed inventory, or supplier managed inventory. So that's a common one. A lot of people have done research on that one, SMI, VMI. But what we found is that there is another kind of collaboration called CMI, okay, customer managed inventory, which is to say the customer is in charge. SMI is supplier in charge. CMI is customer in charge. And we say, hey, why do some companies use VMI? Why do some companies use CMI? And of course, there are some companies that don't do anything. They are decentralized. So why? So we started thinking about this question. So to give you some examples, is that on the right-hand side are companies that do VMI. So we all know companies like Barilla. There is actually a famous teaching case about Barilla, with the Italian pasta company. They do VMI, but many other companies did it too. Campbell Soup, Dell Computer, Walmart, P&G, Saturn, they all do VMI, SMI. But then we discovered that there are some companies that like to do customer in charge. HP has done it, Hyundai has done it, Boeing has done it, yeah, Continental Automobile component company, Xerox and Apple, they did CMI. So the question is, why is that? Why do some companies like to have the customer in charge, and why do some companies that like the supplier in charge? So the research question is, number one is that, can these two types of collaboration lead to the first best, meaning that they could lead to the best solution, like equivalent to a centralized control? Second, can they be win-win? In fact, it's win-win-win potentially. Win-win-win meaning that, can they be win-win for the supplier and customer, and can they also win to the end consumer? To the end consumer benefit from that as well. And what kind of cost-sharing schemes and incentives are needed to achieve the above results? And the final one is, what kind of characteristics, either product characteristics or operational characteristics, that could lead to the adoption of SMI versus CMI? So why do some companies choose CMI? Why do some companies choose CMI? Is it because of some characteristics? So that was the research that we did. And it's a paper that we completed and not yet published, but is undergoing review that we did. So to do that, we also have to start with some simple model setup. And the model is simple, two-level supply chain, customer and the supplier. Customers sell to end consumers, and the supplier buys from an external vendor. Notice that the end consumer can be another customer, can be another company. So that could also be possible. And both parties incur the usual costs, the shortage costs, inventory costs, and the processing costs, and so on. But some costs potentially can be shared, like inventory costs can be shared, and the shortage costs could potentially be shared depending on the contract and the mechanism. So now the supplier, when it's a shortage, the supplier have to get it from the external, another external source to ensure. This is mainly to simplify the two-level echelon supply chain so that we can have decomposition. And a very common assumption used by many researchers in multi-echelon inventory. And both parties want to minimize cost. And simple IID, stationary, normal demand, and no information asymmetry. So the usual assumptions hold. And what we found is that actually the key driver is whether those penalty costs are incurred in a differential way. That is, that's penalty cost of the customer stock out versus the supplier stock out may have differential impact to the two parties. If the differential impact is more to the customer, then the customers will have the incentive to say, hey, I need to be in charge. If the cost in differential cost is incurring more, impacting more of the supplier, then the supplier would want to be in charge. Very simple. And if the demand is high, more uncertain, then both parties would say, hey, let's do something. Yeah, let's not leave it decentralized. Decentralized would not help because the demand is too uncertain. So that was what we did. The analysis showed, a very simple analysis that showed, yeah. So the question now is, what industries or companies are good candidates for the adoption? And so what we did is that we used the data, because in the Barilla case, there's some data we got. In Saturn, we have some data we got from Saturn because Morris Cohen and I have done some work for Saturn, so we were able to get some data from them. Boeing is a case, well-known case, Boeing 787, so we were able to get some data from them. HP, I've done a lot of work for HP, so I got some data. And sure enough, we discovered that those data really show that SMI fits better for Barilla and Saturn, which is why they would not choose CMI, because CMI, you cannot find a win-win parameters. We change all the parameters. There is no way you can find a win-win contract. And the same thing for Boeing and HP. Here, the customers would be win-win, customer CMI. And there were no other better sharing contracts for the SMI. So that's why they would not pursue SMI. So this is what we found is that, yep, interesting, that SMI and CMI, there is a reason why companies adopt it. And you cannot easily find the first pass. It turns out that not easy to find the first pass based on SMI nor CMI, but they definitely improve much better than decentralized. And so that is definitely the reason why some companies have chosen to adopt SMI or CMI. We could not guarantee first pass. It means that some additional contracts and incentive alignment contracts is needed. We have some simple cost sharing, inventory cost sharing, and penalty cost sharing. But you need perhaps even more complicated cost sharing scheme to allow that. So this is the second example of interesting research that perhaps can allow us to see how industry can observations can be. The third renaissance would be the ecosystem by social innovation. Social innovation is important for supply chain. Why? I think Professor Chris Tang, who also spoke at this series, at this seminar series, have talked a lot about the importance of social innovation. So in fact, I wanted to also echo his view because Chris Tang and I have a lot of common value and interest. In fact, we also collaborated in research as well. Here is an example that says that we need, this is a company called the Labor Voice that says that we need to go inside the factory to learn what the factory workers think about the supply chain. So don't just rely on the factory owners telling you, okay, if you're Nike, don't just go and talk to the factory owners. Don't just audit. So in fact, go deep inside using apps. Apps are given to the factory workers and the factory workers can tell you. So this is what Nike did. Nike called this equitable manufacturing as opposed to lean manufacturing. Nike says that we need to be equitable to make sure the workers are better off, not just making sure Nike is better off, not enough for the factory owners to be better off. The factory management is better off. Let's make sure the factory workers are better off by using what? By tracking, by using an app to track them. How are they doing? Are they health-wise? Are they better? Are their families happier? And we help them to build capacity. And we have new ventures to help the workers so that they will be able to buy a bicycle at a lower price, give them a discount to buy a new radios, television. And so this is really, and they did the pilot. And the pilots are conducted in Indonesia and in China, and they show all the signals positive. Productivity is up, labor cost is down, quality is up, and the workers feel energized, and they would be supported. Less absenteeism, less turnover. So this is positive. The CEO of Nestle has once said that we need to make sure we create shared values. We don't want to be just compliant. We don't want to be just sustainable. We want to make sure that the communities share value. Share value means that the communities have safe water, has better nutrition, has better rural development. I work with a friend of mine, Daniel Spitzer. He went to Bhutan. In Bhutan, he grew hazelnuts. So the left-hand side, the person in dark blue is Daniel Spitzer. He went to Bhutan, talked to the village elder. And he says that the only way to be successful in a country like Bhutan to grow hazelnut is to align the interests of the farmers, the government, and the community. And we give them back. We share the profit with them. And we also develop digitally connected way to teach people there. And to do that, I will teach them how to restore the forest, growing hazelnut on degraded slopes. And I help them I created weather stations, solar power to monitor the conditions, tell the farmers how to grow, when to irrigate, and using Android phones to reach out to the farmers, because the farmers can take a picture of their plant and send it to me. So send it to me, and I'll be able to diagnose problems. I'll be able to see if there is a disease, there's something to be done. And so all of these are helping the farmers. And this is very successful. Hazelnuts are grown in Bhutan very healthy harvesting, just started harvesting last year. And so this is a venture. In fact, my friend Kelvin O'Mara wrote a book called Supply Chain Saves the World. We can save the world. Social innovation, we must do something. I work with an NGO in Africa called Riders for Health. Riders for Health is to help the people in Africa to have health care. Here it shows a young mother carrying a baby, and she has to walk miles and miles and more miles because that's the nearest clinic. Motorcycles cannot be used by health workers because they are abandoned. They're not well maintained. They don't have the spare parts, which is why Riders for Health, the CEO and her husband, Barry Coleman, Andrew Coleman is the CEO, came to Stanford and gave a talk that says that oil filters can save Africa by having training, by having better maintenance, by having monitoring. These are the nurses, the technicians can ride on a motorcycle to deliver malaria nets, medicines, condoms to the people in rural areas in Africa by checking the bicycles so that the motorcycles can be in top-notch condition. This nurse can visit the mothers, can visit the rural areas and reach out to the children. So I did a study. I did a multi-year study. It's a big research study, empirical study, and we were able to track and find out that indeed with riders versus the government's own motorcycle, which would break down all the time, we were able to increase the uptime of the motorcycles. We were able to reduce the number of motorcycles that died. We're able to have more outreach. We have more patient visits, more immunization. Talk about immunization. This is not vaccine of COVID. Of course, by that time, it was the immunization of cholera. It was the immunization for the German measles and so on. And the child growth monitoring is better. Education session more conducted. So everything is positive. However, what we found is that the cost per kilometers, even though they were going much, much better than the government, but riders have two kinds of contracts with the government. This is in a particular country called Zambia at that time. One is the government owned the motorcycle, but contract out the repair to riders. The other one is riders own the motorcycles and lease it back to the ministry and then run it. So there are two kinds, right? Repair only contract and repair and replacement. So the question is, which one is better? Which one is better for the overall? And in fact, riders told us that they prefer the second one, repair and replacement, if they could. Why? Because they could optimize the age of the motorcycle. They say that we are in charge and we can optimize the age. And the government is in charge. The government aging decision may not be optimal. And so Riders says that we prefer RRC. We're trying to convince the government to allow us to have RRC. And so our research, my research this time is to say, hey, why? Why did Riders favor RRC? So to do that, we need to model what the interest objective of a social enterprise. Riders for Health is a non-profit social enterprise. We need to model the vehicle reliability, simple reliability model that would degrade over time, but you need to fix it. Periodic maintenance would restore it. But at some point, the vehicle just simply died, so old that it would simply die. So the retirement age, either natural death or premature, you say, okay, every 5 years, let's replace it. Every 5 years, we replace it. So that's possible. So even if the vehicle is still running, let's retire it at 5 years or 10 years. So this is a decision that to be made. And so the vehicle life is like a renewal cycle. And the first best solution would be if we control everything, what should be the optimal retirement age? And so to do that, we model the social enterprise. And the social enterprise objective consists of two components. The first component is the availability. We say if the decision is tau, which tau is the retirement age, what would be the availability, long run availability of the vehicle. And there is a value for availability, because the availability means that I can use the vehicle to go and deliver medicine. I can go and check up on the children. I can go and deliver literature. I can go and conduct education sessions. So there is a value from availability. And the social enterprise also plays a weight. How much do I value availability? The other side, right-hand side, is the profit. The NGO derive a profit from contracting with the government, and the government pay them, and then they can derive in their running costs. They can derive a profit, and that is the weight applied to the profit. So for a mission-driven enterprise, gamma would be small. Okay, for a complete nonprofit, gamma could be high, could be very high. Gamma would be very high. For a non-profit company, 1 minus gamma should be 0. But not every social enterprise want to derive 0 profit, because you need to get some small profit so that you can invest in long-term improvements and so on. So we think that gamma doesn't have to be 1. Gamma is between 0 and 1. For a pure for-profit company, gamma is 0. 1 minus gamma is 1. So everything is in between. The government give you constraints saying that, hey, at least minimal availability, you cannot do worse than what I'm doing now. If my availability now is 70%, you cannot do worse than 70%. And I give you a budget. I don't have infinite money. I give you a budget. So what we did is to analyze that. And what our analysis, simple analysis, doing kind of like a incentive alignment program, economic model, shows that first best can be achieved, but it's a very difficult, complex contract. Doesn't seem to be practical. Linear contracts usually would lead to the government usually retiring too late. The government would retire too late because they don't want to buy a new motorcycle all the time. So they will retire very late, which would lead to suboptimal results. When the nonprofit company or the social enterprise is in charge, the aging would be lower and the availability would be better. So a mission-oriented social enterprise like riders would prefer, therefore, the second type of contract. And we also can see that, of course, there's an overhead for managing vehicle replacement. Why? Because in real life, riders have to go out and solicit funds and manage the vehicle replacement, going out to buy the vehicle. And so there's an overhead. If the overhead cost is high, obviously, they would not prefer RRC. But if the overhead, they're efficient, then they would prefer RRC. So this model analysis showed the following. Show that number one is that I think we need to model the social objective. A social objective is necessary in order for us to do ecosystem social innovation. Social innovation, you must bring in the social value part, which is why this simple objective function is necessary to balance profit objective versus the social objective. And it allows us to model some companies that are more mission-driven. Some companies are less mission-driven because social enterprises are not one size fits all. Some social enterprise value a little bit profit. So some social enterprise still prefer more profit. So they're all not equal. And third is that it also helps us to explain why in the real life, Riders for Health prefer the second kind. Because Riders for Health, it turns out, is more a mission-driven enterprise. The two founders are very socially driven, mission-driven. They are passionate about saving lives. And so that explains. And so we feel very good about the use of an analytical model to try to explain why some contracts are preferred and some contracts are less preferred. And so this is why the empirical observation motivated our research. And that is how good researchers hopefully will all learn how to do that. I think this is a small step for us. So in conclusion, I'll go back to my final slide, that the new supply chain renaissance must be like Juji says, that first, better yourself, better your immediate family, better your bigger nation, and then eventually the universe. We start with using digital technologies to improve the enterprise and the immediate supply chain. And I have shown you a simple example of a research that used 3D printing to examine how that digital technology disruption can result in the different level of impacts, substitution impact, structural impact. And then we move on to the extended supply chain requiring new forms of supply chain collaboration. There we are seeing more and more collaboration happening. TSMC created new collaboration platform. Haier, new collaboration platform. Shenzhen created ecosystem collaboration. And one small example I shared with you was the work that I did with Morris Cohen and Xi Chen and Tobias on why do we observe the new form of collaboration of customer managed inventory, in addition to the standard literature of looking at vendor managed inventory, supplier. Well, it turns out that the world is full of customer managed inventory example too, not just one-sided. And we examine using model-based research to explain why in some circumstances, customer managed inventory is preferred, why we want to do that. And it's not always the case of supply managed inventory. It's not always the case decentralized is better. And customers is under certain circumstances, customers managed inventory is preferred. And why we need to continue the research to see whether these two types of inventory management scheme still can be improved further, because neither of them get first best. I should notice that the end consumer can be better off too, in the form of that these type of collaboration increase the availability level and the service level so that the end consumers could be better off. So it's not just the two companies, the supplier customers playing tricks on each other, and they are either better off with win-win. It is possible for win-win-win in this case. And finally, for social innovation, and I think increasingly as Chris Tang and I have written, and Chris Tang has done a lot of research on that, is why social innovation is possible, is important. And I have given you an example why Nestle wanted to do that, why many of these companies wanted to do that. Bhutan hazelnut is better. I should mention that even Professor Max Shen has discovered that. Here I want to mention Professor Shen's very excellent work that he worked with JD.com and showed that during the pandemic, when JD.com has to deliver the hospital needs and the food and medicines to the lockdown area. So JD.com was able to use very intelligent algorithms to detect gouging, to detect some supplier price gouging, or to detect some customer. Instead of ordering one item, they order 10 because they also want to hoard. And by detecting them, they stop those unethical practices, and so to have more equitable distribution of the goods. And that I think is like equitable distribution. That's part of social innovation. And to do that, I use the example of Riders for Health to show why the motorcycles in Africa, by modeling the social innovators' objectives, the enterprise, were able to examine why different contracts can lead to different outcomes and could get to much better availability for the common people, for the needed patients. And so I think that these are small examples of research that can be conducted along this social renaissance line. I am going to stop sharing here now and see if there are any comments or Q&A. The Q&A, of course, can be on my perspective and research, but also I welcome some of you also have done a lot of work along this dimension. And so I hope that it would stimulate your thoughts and stimulate your sharing as well. So Professor Hua Yong-Hong have received some questions, I hope, and maybe he can select a few to share, and I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Lee, for the very yeah, interesting and also insightful seminar. So we received some questions. The first one is from Duncan Clint from Kinaxis, Canada. I think his questions are for some early. I mean, some materials you presented in the very beginning of your talk about something customer specific. I think his question was whether it refers to, let's say, the size of Nike. I mean, so I think it's to clarify what customer specific means in your seminar.
Yeah, no, so good, thank you. Thanks for the question. And so here we are a stylized model. Obviously, this is a stylized model. And we are trying to say, well, if the customers needs along it could be a line, horizontal line, but we use a circular city, a circle, that they can be on any circle, meaning that preferences, some of them are big, some of them are small, or color preferences. You can look at the circle as the spectrum of color. We like red, we like green, and so on. Now, if the product options are there, you're only producing, let's say, 5 options. It's red, green, yellow. But what if I like some different grade of yellow? And so you won't have a choice. I'm forced to choose something. So that was the customer specification, that the customers can be infinite. Actually, the customer's preferences can be infinite because the color preferences can be all kinds of shades. And so that would be the specification of the customers. And we're trying to say 3D printers theoretically can satisfy you perfectly if everyone is using 3D printer. So that's the idea.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Professor Lee. Okay. So I think Duncan has just clarified some other his questions. So would customers be able to order a size, let's say 7 instead of a 7.5 or 7, etc. Yeah, the shoes are being printed, so could maybe do any size. Yeah. So when you were talking about the colors, so that part. Yes.
You're right. Now, shoes. First of all, it's that shoes is a very particular. Nike, of course, is experimenting. So size is one, but maybe Nike is thinking about potentially the material can also. Do you want completely this particular material? I can mix material for you. So that would be another infinite number of possibilities, right? The mixing. Now, another perhaps more useful example is medicine. Medicine is actually fair. FDA has approved some special kind of medicine. So today, if I have to take a medicine, it's a 100 milligram, 200 milligram, 300 milligram. That's all I have. I have to choose, right? 100 or 200. But I cannot have 121 milligram. Now you can ask, well, why would 121? It turns out that depending on the size and mix of a person, depending on your gender, depending on your race, maybe a particular medicine is optimal for you, but I cannot use the optimal. I have to choose among, okay, what are the dosage offer? The dosage offer is just a few. So that is why it's a potentially different. So I was told that in the extreme case, a vaccine can be customized for you. So you can see some people have violent skin reaction, or somebody has a particular reaction and so on. Well, it's because of my chemistry mix up. So what if this is dreaming? We're dreaming. Yeah. What if I can create a particular vaccine that will minimize your side effects and still work? That is a dream. So I can see. But today, of course, medicine, only very small number of medicine has been approved to be able to use 3D, and in fact, it's using 3D printing to print. So you're right. So that would be kind of the degree. So, and I think I was told that in Japan, they are also experimenting with 3D printing sushi. Rice. Wow. So you see the rice, some people say, oh, it's too sweet. This rice is too sweet. And this rice, the texture is not I like. And it turns out that texture and sweetness is a continuous variable. You can argue it's a continuous variable, right? Yeah. So it's not like sweet, not sweet. No, it's a continuous variable. And now, of course, you can Google. I Google one time and I found out, what, 3D printed sushi. Yeah, somebody is making it, a machine that would make, okay, it's amazing. Well, these are very specialized cases.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Professor Lee. I think Duncan has another question. So he said, also likely not one 3D printer, but several at each store to reduce queue times. So increase the fixed or at least big steps course. I think some comments, yeah, of your
definitely.
3D print.
There is a fixed cost. There is a fixed cost for sure. Because the equipment is not cheap today. It's not cheap, and also it's limited. So you can only use a 3D printer to print certain kind of things, and using certain materials, right? So a store may not do it yet. The store may not be willing to invest, and it's only in how many customers would want that. Yeah. So this is more futuristic. I'm thinking of futuristic in the future, what would happen. There are some people who even predicted that at some future point, we can have a 3D printer at home. You can have a 3D printer at home, and so you need something, you print. you print. You need a particular screw. I don't want to even go out and buy. I just print the screw. Yeah. So of course, I think these are all futuristics.
I see. Yeah, thank you, Professor Lee. So we have a question from a PhD student in our department, Yijia Wang. So his question is as follows. China is focusing on promoting the third-party farming services. The farmer could rent their farmlands to those companies and they find some other jobs to increase their revenue. So what is your ideas or thoughts about this new services?
Oh, I think this is a great suggestion. I think a great topic. There's a lot of potential there. So I thought of the similarity of your student's question is China's third party. In irrigation, it's already happening in irrigation equipment. So for a farmer to buy a irrigation equipment, the modern, very advanced irrigation equipment, high tech, very high tech, because it would have a sensor to sense the temperature, sense the humidity and so on. And then based on that, you optimize irrigation. How much water should I drip? And should I drip at every 5 hours? Or should I drip how much water intensity, depending on what kind of crop I'm growing? So these are very sophisticated. But most farmers are not that sophisticated. You go to India, the farmer and say, "Hey, yeah, this is a very high tech," and the farmer said, "I don't even know how to read. How can I use your equipment?" So the new way of doing it is to lease the equipment. So you don't need to buy, farmers, and let me monitor it for you. I would handle the irrigation for you. You don't know how to irrigate, I irrigate it for you, because everything is by Bluetooth, by wireless, satellite. The information is getting at my office, and I can just control opening and so on. So I think this is fascinating. However, the incentives is a tricky one. How should we get paid? Should it be paid based on a fixed fee? Should I be paid based on a monthly fee? Should I be paid based on your yield? Okay, so if I can double your yield, let me pay more. I think this is a fantastic problem to work on.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Professor Lee. I see some audience, so they have raised their hand. I think Amanda Wang, and also Wu Fan. So you have some questions. So maybe you want to ask here, or yeah, I can try to unmute you. Amanda, you have question? Or yes.
Any question? Is
there?
Hello, Professor.
Hello, hi. You have to speak up. I couldn't hear you too well. Yeah.
So long, so no see. Yeah. Yeah, actually the talk is very interesting. I really enjoy it. I think a few years ago, you also mentioned about the Zen project you did at the Africa riders. I'm so glad the paper now comes out.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor Wang. And Wu Fan, so you're here. You want to ask question here? You can unmute or you can accept to unmute.
Or you can type question in.
Yeah, or you can type. Yeah.
I see some questions coming in, so maybe
Sure.
I'll answer those questions first. Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and I
Professor Alex, yeah. Please, Professor Lee. Yeah.
One question from Tim is whether I've done some research and development in the context of supply chains in Hong Kong. I haven't done much directly in Hong Kong. I work with companies in Hong Kong which have operations mostly in China or Southeast Asia, but not directly inside Hong Kong. So I have to apologize that I haven't done enough. But I'm hoping the following. I'm very fascinated by the Greater Bay Area initiative and how can we make use of the Greater Bay Area for innovation in changing the way supply chains are done. So I hope that is something I can do related to Hong Kong. The only work that is linked to Hong Kong is the Port of Hong Kong that I have done together with Professor Chung-Yi Lee at Hong Kong USC on how container logistics can be monitored to reduce the congestions, to improve the on-time delivery. But that is not directly just Hong Kong. That was more just in general, Port of Hong Kong, Port of Singapore, and so on. I think there is a question from Professor Yang. Alex is a good friend too. Thank you, Alex. And Alex asked me the question of how to balance between the business operations side and the technology side in the renaissance of supply chain. And it's a very important point that you made, the balancing. And the reason is because the business operations cannot continue really these days without paying regard to the technology side. And the technology development must also have implication to business. So for instance, the technology improvement, even like 3D printing that I described, would affect the retailer and the manufacturer in the future and in the new channel. So Nike cannot single-handedly and simply say, hey, Walmart, everyone do 3D printing. They won't if they don't see the benefits, right? So I think that's why it's important for us to have to continue to balance. One thing that we in the operations management, industrial engineering, and production management side has the benefit is that we look at both sides. This is why pure computer scientists may not have the benefit of us understanding the business implications and the management implication, while the pure business school side, not having enough of an exposure to the technological development, may not be aware of some of the significant advances and progressive advances of technology. So I think that's why our community happened to be, we're not just pure business people only looking at finance at that time. We look at technology development, but we also understand the business side. So I think we have a mission. Our mission is to bridge that gap and do the balancing. So thank you for raising that point, Alex. I think there is a next question that came in that says that, do you think some supply chain theories apply equally to emerging markets and developed countries? Or does the supply chain in emerging markets need some new theories and models? I firmly believe the answer is yes to this question. Very good point that you make. The reason is because by spending time, I spend time in Africa. My research in Writers for Health, my research in West Africa convinced me that we cannot just use the existing supply chain theories and apply it. Recently, I've been talking to some pharmaceutical companies about the vaccine rollout. The vaccine rollout, COVID-19 rollout, and everyone says that let's make sure we track. Let's make sure we have visibility of who got vaccinated, who are the people, and who got the vaccines inventory, and how much of the vaccines are expiring soon, and so on. So we must have complete visibility. When I talk to the people who are rolling out in Africa, they said, no way. No way can we have the same visibility. We are oftentimes in semi-dark. It's not complete dark, we're semi-dark. We don't know which pharmacist got it, which hospital got it. We don't know. And yet we have to make decisions based on that. So this is a simple example, is that we have to make decisions without complete visibility. And this is similar to some of the research that we have done in inventory. We say that we cannot have total visibility of inventory, and yet we have to make better decisions. It is almost like decision making with an incomplete information. We need to do more information similar to that, because emerging economies, developing economies are very different from the developed economies. So this is a very good question. Thank you for that. And I would answer a few more if I can possibly do, is that the question is, this is more the sharing question, which is very good. Mr. Yijai Wong that says that you are conducting agricultural machines, agricultural equipment, and such companies dispatch and provide on-demand services. And so this is very good on-demand services. Thank you for mentioning that, and I'm glad that you are also working in this. My good friend Jenny, very nice to meet you here, Jenny. And Jenny like to raise the issue of environmental sustainability. And perhaps neither customers nor suppliers had yet correctly account for the environmental cost. And I think this is a good point, Jenny. Thanks for bringing this up. And in the research in the 3D printing, in fact, initially when we wrote the paper, the referee exactly pointed out that, hey, you have to expand your paper, add a section on environmental impacts, because without that, it's incomplete. So we did that. So thank you for reminding us, the referees, and we did it and satisfied the referee. But I think this is a good point. Environmental impacts are also crucial, important when we talk about social innovation. Environmental is more than just climate change, but also how do we serve the needs of the poor? How can we make sure it's equitable to the workers' life and community? So thank you. Stephen is also another longtime friend. Stephen, back in the days, I think, wow, this is a long time ago that I met Stephen. So good to meet you here. And I think thank you for making the comment for the insights. I am trying to see if I would be able to answer one more question, and then we have to end. I know that the timing is up. So this question is from Jiwang Yi. And thank you for raising the question. And because it's a long question, so I think I would read that. So the question is, considering the normality in our research community, would it benefit and would it really happen if our community accepts and embraces the problem diversity in the real world? And if yes, how to change the normality views of the community? So I think by what normality, what you mean is not just normal distribution, right? The normality is maybe the standard. So we oftentimes have a very standard way of approaching problems, and yet I think the point I'm trying to make is that the three simple examples that I made are really not quite normal approach. The first one is 3D printing is because of the intervention of the technology, which created a new way of doing things. And the second one is collaboration is because we observe customer managed inventory. So how come everyone is only doing research in vendor managed inventory? No one is looking at customer managed inventory, but customer managed inventory do exist. And so that's how non-normality came about. And the third one is mainly because the social enterprise, nobody has modeled a social enterprise. Social enterprises think differently. Their incentives are different from regular enterprises. And so that's why we have to capture that. And so all of them are simple examples. I'm doing a small way of introducing the not so normal problem. And I agree with you, Jay, that we need to do more. We need to also open our eyes and observe that. So I think I am very happy to be able to answer this number of questions in the very short time, but I also want to thank the questioners because your questions brought up good points, allowing me to expand, but I also always learn from these questions as well. So thank you again for this opportunity to share. Yonghong, I'm giving back the control to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Lee, and also all the participants for joining this great seminar. Also, thank you, Professor Sheng, for delivering the welcome speech. May I now invite Professor George Huang to close our seminar.
Thank you so much, Yonghong. Professor Lee, thank you so much for your very insightful talk. I think we have a number of research students on the list, and they will benefit a lot from your talk. Indeed, under the digitization era and also, COVID-19 and other trade frictions, global supply chain research is at the next height for further exploration. I think our young colleagues and also PhD students will benefit from this. And finally, you are very welcome to come to Hong Kong U, and we will host your visit. Our PhD research students and also young faculty members were waiting for you, expecting you for the mentorship. We do have 5 or 6 assistant professors in the department, so they are looking forward to see you in the department when you have time and when it is safe to travel. Thank you so much again, Professor Lee.
Thank you again. Yeah. Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Lee and Professor Cheng, and we go dim sum. Yes, okay, see you. Yeah, everybody here. Okay, so our colleagues. Okay, see you. Thank you, Professor Lee.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.